Hello, everybody. Welcome into the ASN podcast. I'm Andre Khatchaturian once again, joined today with two awesome guests, Ken Topalian and Joe Almasian, the two first. Well, you both of them were the first Armenians to participate in the Winter Olympics in 1994, representing Armenia. And today they're here to join us to talk about that experience. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Andre, thank you.
Thanks, Andre.
Yeah, so obviously you guys made history back in '94, and we're recording this on the opening ceremonies of the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milano Cortina. But take me back to 32 years ago on the opening ceremony of the 1994 Winter Olympic Games in Lillehammer in Norway. What was your experience like for you at those opening ceremonies, knowing you guys were the first Armenians that were going to be able to compete in the Winter Olympics?
Well, I'm going to
You
say
want to go first, Kenny?
first things first. 32 years ago, Joe and I had no gray hair. We were young men 32 years ago. Joe, where do you want to start? I mean, you want to start with walking in and getting our credentials? You want to start with the Olympic Village and the flag raising? You want to start with opening ceremonies? I mean, there's so many things, Andre.
Well, I guess
How do we get there?
yeah, I guess in the spirit of opening ceremonies being today, Kenny, why don't we start there?
Yeah.
And actually, I had a couple pictures. We can chat about what they are. That's us walking into opening ceremonies at the
Wow.
at the at the base of the ski jump, and we sat right behind that, which was
Yep.
That's
the
incredible.
Olympic flame, and we can kind of get into that a little bit. But yeah, since I'm going, I'll keep going. I guess both for both of us, it was a bit surreal. There's obviously a lot of storytelling to get to the point of us walking into opening ceremonies. But I think that, probably one of the most amazing things for us was just the fact, that we were walking in amongst the athletes of the world and representing Armenia for the first time. It was special. We were the only two athletes, but there was another skier that was from Armenia, from the village of Tsakhadzor, and
Arsen
unfortunately he
Harutyunian.
wasn't. Arsen,
Correct.
yes, of course. And so it was special that he was able to carry the flag in opening ceremonies, even though he wasn't able to compete. But it was an awesome honor, to meet him, and I think it was obviously an honor for him to carry the flag in. But
So
Andre,
going,
just to continue with that, I think the most special part of that was Parega Kayastan, Welcome Armenia. As we walked in, we heard that. I mean, it was just the smiles on our faces, of everything that we went through to get there. The race became secondary. We had walked in to opening ceremonies behind the Armenian flag, and that was the most important thing.
so it's interesting to note for people listening to this, 1994, Armenia had just gained independence for about 3 years at the time, following the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So prior to 1991, Armenian Olympians would compete for the Soviet Union or the United States or wherever country that they were coming from. So this was unique in that it was the first time Armenia had sent a delegation because it was an independent country for the first time. So take me back to that time. How did you guys come up with this idea to compete in bobsledding at the Olympics? So maybe go back. What was the who planted this idea? I guess take me back to the early '90s.
That all begins with Paul Varadian. Paul Varadian is a Providence alumni here, family friend. Paul had been on the U.S. skeleton team. Paul had been very active in the sport of skeleton for many years. When the breakup of the Soviet Union in 92, he had the idea of in 94, let's put a team together. Paul was our chef de mission. Paul was the one who did all the paperwork in Hayastan. Paul was the one who approached us and said, here's an opportunity. Would you boys like this? And being athletes at the time, Joe and I said yes.
Wow.
yeah, it all came together pretty fast, Andre. I mean, literally, we're both young adults in our late 20s, and yeah, I remember pretty well, even though it was a long time ago. And he, like Kenny described, Paul sort of called us individually and presented this opportunity. And he said, if you're interested in doing this, you have to act kind of quickly. We don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of money or even know if the end is possible. But there's a training camp in Calgary, Canada, and you have to buy a couple of plane tickets, learn how to slide in this training camp in Calgary. And I think his quote was to me, "If you don't kill yourself and you want to keep going, then we'll see where it goes from there." And Kenny and I called each other, I think, almost immediately after that, saying, um, all right, let's, in the words of the modern expression, let's go, right? So
What year
that's
was
where it
this?
started. That was just before
Great.
Thanksgiving of 1992. So we were made aware of this opportunity, basically one full, call it a season. So in this winter sport, the 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 races and different things happen over the course of the winter. So
Yeah.
that's, one year into the next. So the winter of 92 into 93 was that season prior, which was important because in order to make any qualification standards, you had to compete over two different seasons, and there was lots of other criteria for winning,
Right.
getting certain points in races and experience on different racing tracks and so forth, which we can get into some of those details. But it was the 92 93 season, and in any season, the racing sports, whether it's skiing and so forth, you have all these competitions that lead up to the world championships at the end of a season. In an Olympic year, that championship is culminating into the Olympic finals. And so then the 93 94 season is when we had to sort of finish our qualifying points. And it wasn't up right up until the very end, literally the last one of the last World Cup races in Switzerland, where we got one World Cup point that fulfilled a couple of track qualifications and a single point qualification to meet the standard that allowed us to qualify.
I have so many questions about everything. It just follow-ups in my head that just popped in my head that I want to ask before I forget them. Number one is you said you were athletes, but you guys weren't bobsled athletes, were you? What sport did you guys uh were you guys playing in your 20s? Like, was bobsled something you guys were involved in, or was your first time doing it?
You want to go
We
first,
were both,
Kenny? You
we
go.
were both track athletes. I mean, we both ran for the Province Valenciennes AYF. Joe ran in college. I was a record holder in the hurdles of the AYF Olympic Games. Joe was a sub 50 400 meter man. Um, and basically, we were picked because of, what we've achieved athletically through our track prowess.
So to follow up on that, I think it ties back to what Kenny was talking to with the person who was the organizing, member of the squad, Paul Varadian,
Yeah.
who had experience up in Lake Placid with the skeleton, which was an exhibition sport at the time. This is one where you sort of go face
Yeah,
first
face first.
on a single man
It was not an
sled.
Olympic sport at the time, though.
Not, it was exhibition sport at the time he was doing it, but he understood the ice racing, and he understood that a track type athlete could really get up a learning curve pretty fast. It wasn't something like if Kenny and I weren't skiers, for example, and the proposal was, hey, we need some downhill skiers. You guys haven't skied before, but you'll figure it out in a year. No, not the case. Of course, with something like that, you need to do it almost your entire life to be an expert at it. And in this case, taking a track type of athlete where you have to push this, 475-pound sled off the top of the mountain and you have 15 meters to sprint as fast as you can and then jump in. The balance of the racing can be learned fairly quickly to
Yeah.
be competitive. Of course, that last that top 50%, top 5%, top 1%, that's the part that takes years
Years.
of experience. But to be competitive, the learning curve is very quick as long as
Interesting.
you have that initial athletic checkbox made, right?
So this was shortly after, the Cool Runnings Jamaican bobsled team that had happened. Was there any impetus from that you guys were like, oh, well, they did it in Jamaica. We have these training facilities near Lake Placid. Well, let's give it a shot.
Good question. I think the timing is interesting of when that movie came out, but I'm not sure that in and of itself was the impetus. But I'm sure that there were some thoughts that rang true with that that concept, no doubt.
So you guys got a lot of help from Paul Varadian, and it's well documented. Armenian Weekly had an article about you guys. You guys did a lot of training in Lake Placid.
Correct.
How was that? How was that like? Especially just being so close. I mean, it's not that close from Boston. It's still a long drive, but having that proximity, how did that proximity help you guys?
Andre, I was very fortunate. Friday night, I would leave my business. I would go to Joe's house. Joe's mother would have dinner for us, and then we would proceed 5 hours. That's with good weather. We would train Saturday and Sunday, and then Sunday we would come home after a day of racing, and we'd get home around 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and Joe's mother had dinner ready for us again. I mean, that's the Armenian family for you. And then the goodie bag she packed for us for the road trip. Again, the support we got from our families was very, very important through all of this.
Yeah, Andre, to answer your question in a different way, Lake Placid was really the only track in North America
Yeah.
at the time. I should say in the United States.
United States.
In 2002, of course, Salt Lake City games came and they built a track for that. And the only other track in North America was in Calgary, up in Canada, which is ironically where we learned the sport because that's where this training camp was, where
Yeah.
we were coached by some Olympic coaches with a bunch of other countries where we learned how to race or slide. But when we came back, Lake Placid was the only game in town. So yeah, it was the closest, but it was still, we'd go to work. Friday would come, we'd pack our bags, and essentially that first winter, Kenny, I think from,
November
I
to
think that was
March.
yeah, from the end of November through March. We were there every weekend. We didn't
Oh,
miss a
wow.
weekend that whole time,
And
and
Andre,
that
well, I'll tell you something else, as Joe will attest to. Our friends would sit and say, "What are you doing this
Yeah, I was
weekend?"
just gonna ask that.
We're
Yeah.
gonna go. We're going to Lake Placid to train. They're like, "Oh yeah, you're going to the Olympics." That's right. We forgot. They were kind of, busting us a little bit, but we felt that we were going to give this our best effort in any way, shape, possible form. We were not going to leave anything undone. We're going to put ourselves in the best position that if and when we qualified, we did the track qualifications, the point qualifications, and the citizenship came through, we were going to be there. And that's what we committed to ourselves. So again, November, December, January, February, March, 5 months every weekend.
Wow.
We were in Wisconsin.
So how did you? Well, that popped up another question. You said the winter months you trained. Any sort of training in during the summer months?
Yeah, so not bobsled. Oh my gosh, bobsled specific.
Yeah,
That's a tongue
it
twister.
was more just
Um, but it's really about fitness
yes.
and speed. So it's a bit of strength training because, like I said, this sled is almost 400 pounds, and you got to take this thing from zero to as fast as it can go. So it's sort of squat training and general conditioning. Um, so from that perspective, off season, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they have there's concrete tracks you can run dry, um, and do some non-winter training, sled specific, non-winter training stuff. But at the time we had it, that was really just keeping yourself fit and doing sprint, track
Right.
type of stuff and strength training.
And you can't bobsled without a bobsled, so without a sleigh. So how did that come about? I know you guys had a secondhand bobsleigh from American Samoa. How did you guys find that?
Again, you want to start it off and
Well, the first ones we had sleds up in Lake Placid, and they were beginner sleds, and we would weld them
yeah,
every weekend. We would fix them every weekend. We had so much stuff that we had to do. We'd be up at 7 in the morning before 9 o'clock track time, just to make sure the sleds were in decent enough shape for us to get down safely. In regards to the one that we actually rented, yes, we rented it from the American Samoan team. And that was done through our coaches. They kind of made that whole deal happen. Joe, you may know more about that because I really didn't really pay much attention to that at that.
But so in the beginning though, how we got our, when we literally drove to Lake Placid for that first day to the track, and we didn't have a coach, we didn't have a sled, we didn't, other than having only just trained maybe the 2 weeks before up in Canada, we were told to go talk to the U.S. coaches and see, what they could do to help us out, at least in the beginning, until we got some other training regiments and actually got a hold of a coach. But In the beginning, they sort of said, "Hey guys, we have this, the shed is at the bottom of the run. You can look in bays 1, 2, and 3 and pick the best one out of there, and it might need a little welding, but you know,
A lot
Kenny
of welding.
having owned a body shop, did a bit of the welding, and I think I took the runners and started sanding and trying to knock some of the rust off. And so we had the Chevette that was falling apart at the beginning because that's all we could have. And by way of background, if we had to buy a new sled from one of two places that you could buy them, it was about 30 grand, about
Jeez.
25 to $30,000 to buy something new. And we didn't have that kind of money. We weren't even really established at that point. So yeah, in the beginnings, we borrowed these old, 15, 20-year-old sleds from the US team. Thankfully, they allowed us to use them. Um, and then little by little, we sort of worked our way up to some better sleds that we
Incredible.
that we borrowed after we sort of established ourselves a little bit, and got some help from a coach that we had sort of hired, who was an old Lake Placid guy, a former slider and coach on the U.S. team in the 70s. Literally, we recruited him out of like the local hardware store. So when we were there, the we said, "Hey, is there any advice you can give us?" That we're talking to the U.S. Uh, coaches at this time, and they said, "Yeah, there's two guys. You might have to go find them in downtown Lake Placid." One guy was the owner of a bar, a local bar. We walked in the door and we said, "Are you so and so?" And he's, like the old fashioned. He's like drying off the glasses and putting them on the bar. He's kind of looking at us, sort of half funny, side eyed. We told him what we were doing. He said, "Yeah, I don't think so. I just can't do that. But Jim Hickey works down at the hardware store. Maybe he'll give you a different answer." So Kenny and I took a drive down to downtown Lake Placid and walked into the hardware store and asked for Jim Hickey. And I think he was, putting away screwdrivers or polishing hammers or something. And we told him our story, and he kind of looked at us and he said, "Yeah, I think I'll do that."
And we got to go.
So that was the beginning. So we had a coach, and we actually shared uh, the coach we shared with two other teams. With the Greek team was another American kid who was doing the same sort of thing to represent Greece as we were for Armenia.
Wow.
And then, as you referenced earlier, the sled that we borrowed was the other team was the American Samoan team. So the three of us shared this one coach and shared a bit of travel expenses as we had to go to Europe and other places to get some track qualifications in. And then ultimately that sh sort of shared teammate, they had a leftover sled from a season or two before the American Samoa team, and we rented our Olympic racing sled from them. Um,
Incredible. So you guys have to travel to Europe for these competitions just to get enough points to qualify for the Olympics. That's not cheap. So, you guys were in your 20s. You guys were funding yourselves at the time, or how,
You
how
want
did
to tell
that
me?
work out?
You
Kenny,
want
we
to
had
tell
two
me? Tell
sponsors, right?
me you want me to tell it.
You can tell us.
Joe and I had two sponsors. I sponsored Joe. Joe sponsored me. And our other sponsor was Visa because we put everything on our credit card. That's where I
Wow.
spent.
Yeah, so yeah, because everything happened so quickly. We really didn't, at the time, we were maybe a bit naive thinking we wouldn't get support, financial support from the Armenian community, because it happened so fast and we sort of were just constantly on the go and planning on our next thing. We really didn't have time to stop and do any fundraising and that sort of thing. We did a little bit once we came back to tell the story and do what went through, we called our chicken and pilaf tour, where we went to different churches and had a dinner and told our story, and whatever money came in at the door helped to offset some of the costs. But yeah, that traveling to Europe. So part of that was the qualifying standards. You had to race over 2 seasons. You had to race in at least 5 or 7 international races. You had to show diversity of track on 3 different tracks. And then in doing all that, that's the minimum, then you had to get a certain amount of points. So you have to finish a high enough level to be able to do that. So the only 2 tracks in the US were, like I said, Canada and US. So we had worked that. Now you still got to get on a plane to go to Calgary. It's not a local trip by any means. and then we had to go to Europe to get into some races. And I think Germany, there were two tracks in Germany. One was actually down. There was issue with the refrigeration, but
Koenigsegg and Winterberg.
Yeah, Winterberg was down,
And
but we
Winterberg.
raced. We trained in Koenigsegg actually,
Yep.
um, and we raced in Switzerland in St.
Wow.
Moritz. There was a
Wow.
World Cup race. We finished dead last, but we actually got 1 point, and that 1 point, the 1 point and the extra track actually were the
Wow.
qualifying standards that helped us to finish that requirement. And it
And
wasn't and it wasn't even until that point, all the winter season long, we kept asking Paul, who was in contact with the U.S., that we hadn't been granted any citizenship status from Armenia. So as you made note, the country was only established as an independent country for maybe 2 years,
yeah.
and so their system of citizenship and certainly granting citizenship to sort of diasporan Armenians, what we were probably some of the first
Interesting.
to get that. So it wasn't until we finished that last requirement and really we were the only two athletes that would have had the ability for Armenia to be represented in the games. It was only at that point that they agreed to grant citizenship status,
Wow.
um, knowing that that was
Andre,
really the
unt-
ticket to, yeah, go okay.
until we got to the Olympic Games and we were getting checked in, and the officials from Hayastan came, we really didn't know if we had it or not. We didn't know what they were bringing. We really didn't know what we were doing. We were very much in the blind. We had done everything athletically that we needed to do, but there was that part of it, like we were just in the dark through the whole time. And
Yeah.
that was a little bit, frightening for us. I mean, we're there, we're ready to go. Thankfully, everything came through and everything went well, and we had our citizenship for Armenia. Um, and we met Arsen. Arsen watched a lot of MTV, which was very funny. That's a whole nother story we'll talk about on the side. Uh, but again, just meeting him and having dinner with him and being with him in his company was a lot of fun.
That's so cool. And at the time, was there like, I know there's like a lot of athletes today who are trying to get their Armenian citizenship in order to compete in athletics in any sport. The males especially, they say, oh, there's a military part of it that they have to fulfill, and some of them get exempt because they're athletes. Was there something like that back in the day?
So, like I said, because it was so new, we really didn't know. We were sort of flying blind and
Right.
taking it on faith that the administrators were going to kind of sort that out, right? Our job was to really make sure we could qualify and
Sure.
have the possibility to even get there to represent, to have Armenia be represented and for us to qualify. And we just put our head down and focused on that and put our faith in the committee to manage the citizenship part. But yeah, I mean, Kenny, maybe you can tell that story of what happened this past year. We were both in Armenia, um, and by the way, we hadn't been to Armenia before, and not up until for me 4 years ago was my first time visiting
Wow.
Armenia. I was there with my son and my daughters for the Home Minutemen games, and it was again this past summer, and I went through the border check at the airport, and came in. Actually, it was my third trip in about 4 or 5 years, and I hadn't really heard or seen any interesting reactions on my entry. But Kenny, maybe you can tell your story.
Well, Andre is very funny. I went with my wife and sons this summer to Armenia, also right around the same time. And everybody's going through customs like no big deal. 30 seconds.
Yeah.
They're like no big deal. I get there, I'm there 10 minutes. Like, when did you leave Armenia last? I've never been here before. Where do you live? I live in the United States. Where are you from? And they're asking me all these questions. I'm telling you, I was 10 minutes there. And afterwards, they let me in. And then when I kind of went, my wife's like, "What happened?" And I explained it, and she was like, "Remember, you hold dual citizenship. It could still be on their records that
Yeah,
you
I'm sure it had to, Kenny, but
it
it's
had to
just
be
interesting that
happened
they brought
before
that
with
up
me, right?
to you and it
But
wasn't with
but
me. So
somehow with me, I must have
Yeah.
flagged something somewhere on the computer, and
Yeah.
it was like I'm there for 10 minutes, and two people are sitting there asking me questions. So it's just very, very funny.
That is
Yeah.
very, very interesting. So let's go back to 1994 again. You guys qualify. You're in Norway. You're in the Olympic Village. It's like, what was everything feeling like at that point for you guys? We're at the Olympics.
Yeah, Kenny, I know you and I had one moment that was interesting, and I'll tell it from my perspective, and maybe you can
Go ahead.
refresh my memory of 30 some odd surreal that while we're walking, we were in the Olympic Village. It's it's a white wonderland in Lillehammer. The snow, I think, was sort of lightly falling, and a couple of athletes are walking by either with skis or different things, and we sort of stopped and looked at each other and said, "We're at the Olympic Games. We're in the Olympic Village." Like it was almost an unbelievable moment, um, and so you think of some athletes who have dreamed their whole life of being there and worked since they were little kids all the way through, and they have that moment for themselves, and then ours was a much more concentrated effort, um, but it was also very special too because Kenny and I growing up diasporan Armenians, of course, but growing up very much with the all the stories of genocide, the stories from our grandparents that we heard directly growing up in the Armenian communities, church and youth organizations, AYF, and so forth. And it really was a dream for us in that sense, and both athletically and as Armenians. I think that was a special part. I don't know if you remember that particular time, Kenny, when we sort of stopped and
I
we're
remember.
watching the snowfall. But
It was just very surreal. Again, as Joe said, we grew up in the Armenian communities, church, Sunday school, Armenian school, Camp Hayastan, AYF. Barahantes is everything under the sun. I mean, this was our life. And to finally, guess what? We are grandchildren of genocide survivors, and here we are representing Armenia. To understand that, to know what we went through, um, we were able to finally get to the Olympic Games. Armenia, as we said, is going to unfurl her flag for the world. It was a very proud moment for us. And Joe and I always asked ourselves, we would like pinch ourselves and go, where are we? Where are we? And as you see all the athletes, the thousands of athletes, the dining room, the weight room, the gyms, everything that's around you. It's just a very surreal thing to be part of. It really
Yeah.
is. It just was incredible.
Do you guys
I
still
mean, the
go
other
ahead?
one,
Go ahead,
Andre,
Joe. Go
sorry to
ahead.
interrupt, but part of that sort of special moment in memory was the the flag raising ceremony. So what's customary for in the Olympics is as each country comes into the Olympic Village, they're honored by having a flag raising ceremony inside the village. And so we had our opportunity was set up for whatever particular day it was, and we stood there with the delegation from Armenia, which was the Olympic president and the Ministry of Sport, Arsen, who was the skier, and his coach, as well as
Paul, you and I.
uh, yeah, and Paul, the chef de mission. So the Med Heidenik playing with the flag raising was, and really the flag being raised for the first time in an Olympic ceremony as Armenia being an independent country was really special. Um, I think for us and for those Armenians who maybe knew about it or didn't know, but it's not something that was televised. But we
That's
do have
really
some
cool
video.
because in the '92 games in Barcelona, that Armenia was part of the unified team, so that makes you two the first athletes representing Armenia to ever compete in the Olympic Games, which is
Yeah, you're right.
not just
Armenia was
winter, but
it
summer.
was independent. Yeah, Armenia was independent during those games, but the country didn't have
Yeah,
So there was no
its
flag
own
raising.
athletes. Yeah, they were part of the unified nation of
that's that's
former Soviet.
very very cool. Do you guys still feel that same pride over the years has passed and the Olympics have become such a big deal throughout the world and Armenia has had so much success, especially in the summer games. But you guys are the first. Is there some sort of pride that comes, especially with your family histories?
I think I'm very proud of our accomplishments and what we're able to do. I take that with me wherever I go. It's in my heart, it's in my soul, it's who we are. Again, it's how we were raised, it's how we were brought up. People ask me all the time, and I'm sure Joe, and again, we tell them exactly what we did and why we did it. Again, we're grandchildren of genocide survivors, and we were able to represent Armenia on the world stage. That is something very, very special to us.
Yeah. So certainly our circle of friends, family, church, and so forth know of our story. Um, and the only thing I do wonder about though is back in Armenia how much notoriety we would have actually had at that time. Of course, the country barely had electricity during that time. They were very much
Totally remember.
struggling, and so I don't know from the Armenia homeland perspective how much knowledge there was of what
Mhm.
was going on. But
Joe,
I hope there was some excitement, but I don't have a good perspective of that. And 30
I
years
don't know
later,
if you remember what we were told after the 88 earthquake, electricity was scarce, everything was scarce. I understand at that time, I believe it was LTP, Levante Petrosyan, was the president at that time. He had opening ceremonies on TV for the Armenian nation.
ah,
If you
okay.
remember, I believe that's what Paul told us.
That could be true. That's a fact that I kind of have lost to time, but um, yeah, and of
Wow.
course the newer
Yeah.
generations may
Again,
not know
how
us,
was it
but
received there? I have no idea.
yeah,
Again, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's no like social media back then or anything like that. It's you're
Right.
just the internet was very new at the time as well. So it's but it's in the history books. You guys are the first, so that's remarkable. So as you guys have gotten older, and you guys are so proud of this. What after that Olympics did you guys end up? Did you guys not want to try this again for the '98 Olympics and maybe 2002, which was in the United States, could have been easier, or was this just always going to be a one and done thing?
well, I know Kenny, when you were in the Olympics, you were just newly married.
I was just newly married. I was about 7 months into my 8 months into
Wow.
marriage. I mean, but again, the timing for me was perfect. 4 years later, I was 4 years older, 4 years slower. I tell Joe that all the time. I also had a family at that time. My business had taken off.
Yeah.
So again, timing was everything for the 94 games. I don't think for 98 we could have done, I couldn't have done it. I know we
Yeah,
tried to do,
we
I remember
were
I
both
remember we tried to,
young.
wait a minute, if you remember, we tried to do a push competition and we were invited by Prince Albert from Monaco. Remember there was a push competition in the summer? We tried to go to that.
Honestly, Kenny, that one I do not remember, but now that you're saying it, it rings true. We didn't go,
We
right?
didn't do it. We were invited. Um, and because we hung out with Prince Albert when we were in Canada, very down to earth man. It was just kind of funny. That's a whole nother story to kind of talk about.
He competed in the games. That's why Kenny's bringing that name up.
Huh.
Yeah, he
Prince
competed.
Albert
He
of
was a
Monaco.
bobsled. So as much money as he had, he was only 5 places in front of us. So
Wow.
he could buy whatever he wanted for a sled,
That's
but he
so
was only
funny.
5 places in front of us.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's a really, really cool story. I will say in 2002, there was another bobsled team representing Armenian at the Salt Lake Games. Have you guys been in touch, or do you guys know Dan Janjigian at all, or were you guys in touch during that time?
I believe Joe
So
was. I wasn't.
yeah, at that time, I forget how we established those connections because like you said, it was sort of pre-social media,
Yeah.
and might have had email back then, not sure, but certainly, yeah, I don't want to paint it as a fax machine only environment, but we no, Dan and I did speak um, because we tried to catch up on different topics, obviously related to racing, and then just how we sort of got through the training and the different elements of fundraising and things like that. But yeah, Ken and I should say not Ken, Dan and I spoke a couple of times, and yeah, he had similar success to us. Didn't have the benefit of the training, the winter training that we did, but he and his partner benefited, I think, from more outdoor training. They
Yeah.
had a sled that they outfitted with wheels and were pushing through the streets of San Diego, I think, was part of their training.
The Bay Area.
Um,
Or maybe it could be San Diego, but it was in
San
California.
Jose, San Jose.
San
I'm sorry.
Jose.
Yeah,
San Jose.
yeah, 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 yeah. Um, and and I think that subsequent year, Tom, kind of looking at a cheat sheet on the side of in the 2002 games, the skier who wasn't able to compete in with us in 94, Arsen, did compete, I think, in 2002. in alpine
Yes,
skiing.
I think he competed in '96 as well, or sorry, '98 as well. Tell me about
You're
him.
right.
You
Yeah.
said you guys enjoyed his company. What was he like?
Oh, sweetheart of a guy. I mean, here you take his story, right? There's a skiing village at Sakadzor. There's an old Soviet training facility, and Kenny and I were just mentioning that during that time there were no the electricity was very limited. So the ski lift, the one ski lift in Sakadzor, wasn't running. So this kid would literally climb up the mountain with the skis on his
Wow.
back and trained that way.
Wow.
I think he was quite a good skier, but he had very limited access to good equipment. Um, his biggest problem was that he could not get a visa to get out of the country to compete and qualify properly. Um, so in fact, when he came to Lillehammer, there was an appeal process because he didn't qualify and wasn't sanctioned by the Ski Federation. He was granted an opportunity to do a practice run and be observed to see if he could even be admitted to the race. Unfortunately, I think his ski bindings failed on one of the runs, and sadly was not granted the ability to compete. But of course, he was at the Olympic Village, as we said, and was honored with the flag, being a flag bearer to walk into the game. So, really, really nice guy. Kenny and I kept in touch with him a couple times because I think he came to the United States
Yep.
and was helping to coach some other skiers. Might have even spent some time with the U.S. ski team for a little while, but then represented Armenia, like you said, in '98 in Japan and in 2002 in Salt Lake City later on. So he did enjoy some other Olympic
Awesome.
competition.
As Joe said, Arsen was just a real nice man. Nice man. Again, what he went through to get there was even more arduous than what we did. As again, skiing downhill skiing, taking your skis off, climbing back up a mountain is very difficult. After, I would say, 3 or 4 runs, you're pretty much spent for the day. I will say Arsen loved MTV because MTV was very new to him, and he was in front of that TV in the Olympic Village whenever he could be. I mean, it was a very funny time. Where's Arsen? Oh, he's downstairs watching TV. And then there was the food in the cafeteria, which was just plentiful. I mean, it was 24/7. There was food available.
That's incredible. I love the MTV story. We're in 2026 now. Obviously, 32 years since you guys competed, but obviously sports are a big part of, Armenian society, Armenian culture, and it's kind of a way to bring Armenians around the world together. Why do you think it's important for, you guys are still involved in sports. I know Ken, you said you're a coach, track coach. Why is it important for Armenians not to just to get to the Olympics or be a UFC champion or whatever? But why are sports so important for the Armenian youth as part of their development?
As a coach, I don't even just think it's an Armenian. I think it's about self-esteem, confidence, teamwork, showing up every day, tributes that you need in your life every day when you go to work for somebody. There's no shortcuts. I don't care if you're all state, all class, all division, but if you come every day and work hard, guess what? You're building confidence. I mean, I work with high school kids, and I think high school is a very tough, tough time for kids. They don't know where they belong. So these kids are now finding some self-esteem, some self-confidence. Gee, coach, I beat my PR by, 2 seconds. I jumped even further than I did last time, coach. I mean, those are all important things for kids. Again, for me, teaching track and field, high jump, long jump, hurdles, is very easy. Getting kids to believe in themselves, I think, is the most important job I do.
Wow.
So I think Kenny, that's sort of part one is the personal side of
That's the
uh,
person.
of sort of the human existence and that confidence piece that you talked about. But I think for Armenian kids, Andre, like you were saying, what's important, it's in a similar way to what was important for us in terms of preserving your Armenian identity, knowing the struggles that our country has seen for generations, for as long as history has been written. In some cases, as we all know, the struggles that the Armenians have been through historically and even in modern times. And so I think it gives them a reason to fight. And so we had a reason to fight. Our grandparents were still alive to see some of our success, and in large part we fought for them as much as we did for personal reasons. Really, you're representing a community and a nation, and so that part is an important part of the Armenian existence, is to continue that legacy of striving to survive and to be the best you can.
Andre, I love seeing athletes today, Armenians, whether they're collegiate athletes, doesn't matter where they are, collegiate, high school. I mean, you see an Armenian name to it, and there's just a bit of pride.
Yeah.
You put a smile on your face. There's that Sofia Gavorkian, an LSU goaltender, a talented young woman. There's
She's
a
great, very humble too. She's so sweet.
Again, you just see these people, Huri Gabeshan, which Joe and I had the opportunity to meet many years ago at the Jersey Olympics. The three of us were together at the Jersey Olympics. Again, very humble. She has her own move named after her, the Gabeshan
Yeah.
in gymnastics. Those are all proud moments. Those just continue to tell the world Armenia's here.
Very
Again,
well said, guys.
you have basketball players in LA that are phenomenal, that are collegiate ball players. We had Anto Keshkegyan, who was at Temple for many years, for 4 years, was a walk-on, was a very talented young man. That just, it doesn't matter. You see a high school kid, he's Armenian. It doesn't matter football, soccer, swimming. It's like, wow, that kid's Armenian. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Incredible. You guys nailed it. Very well said. And thank you guys especially for all the time to share the story about the 94 games and how you guys got there. It's truly, truly inspiring, fascinating, and again, appreciate the time.
Andre, thank you so much.